There are moments in life when everything feels heavy. Not in the way a bad day feels heavy, but in a deeper, more unsettling way, like you're sinking. You're doing everything right, and yet something inside you is gasping for air. But what if you're not drowning in life? What if you're drowning in the parts of yourself you've buried? The thoughts you silenced, the emotions you've locked away, the memories you never wanted to revisit. This is not weakness. This is the cost of survival in a world that rarely gives you the time to feel, to process, to simply be. And long before modern psychology ever gave it a name, there was a man who spoke of this silent suffering. A physician, a philosopher, a mystic of the soul. Ibn Sina. To most, he's remembered as Avicenna, the towering intellect of the Islamic Golden Age. He wrote about medicine, logic, astronomy, law. But beneath his encyclopedic mind, there was something far more human. He saw what others didn't. That no matter how much we learn, how far we advance, we are still haunted by the unseen wounds we carry. And so he asked a different kind of question. What if the body isn't the only thing that can get sick? What if the soul, the self, can fracture too? Imagine this. You're born as a whole being. Open, receptive, present, but from a young age, you're told which parts of you are acceptable, and which ones are too much. Too loud, too emotional, too curious, too you, and so you start to edit yourself. You hide your anger because it's ugly. You swallow your sadness because it's weak. You trade your authenticity for approval. Piece by piece, your inner world gets pushed underground. Ibn Sina didn't call it repression, but he understood it. He believed that emotions weren't just fleeting moods, but messengers from the soul. That when they are ignored, they don't disappear, they distort. They leak into the body. They shape how you see the world. They turn into anxiety, restlessness, chronic fatigue, even physical illness. He called this imbalance, nafsanaya, an ailment of the soul. And in his writings, he offered a diagnosis not just for the body, but for the hidden layers of suffering that we carry in silence. Have you ever felt tired for no reason? Not the kind of tired that sleep can fix, but the kind that lives in your bones. A weariness that feels ancient, like your soul is carrying something it was never allowed to express? That's not random. That's the pressure of a life lived on the surface, while your deeper self remains unheard. Ibn Sina would argue, you are not broken. You are unheard. What you call anxiety might be your soul asking to be seen. What you label as depression might be yourself saying, I can't keep pretending anymore. But here's the thing. The world teaches you to push these things down, to function, to perform, to survive. And so, you smile when you want to scream. You work when you want to rest. You give when you feel empty. You say, I'm fine, until you forget what not fine even feels like. And this is how the disconnection grows. Not all at once, but slowly, like a room you lock and forget exists. Until one day, life gets too loud and the room bursts open. The grief you buried 10 years ago, the anger you never spoke, the dreams you abandoned, all of it comes back, not to punish you, but to ask, are you ready to come home to yourself? Because healing, real healing, doesn't start with a doctor's prescription. It starts with permission. Permission to feel, to grieve, to be confused, to say, I don't know who I am anymore. And let that be okay. Ibn Sina wasn't just prescribing herbs or balancing humors. He was inviting people back into relationship with themselves. He believed that to treat the soul, you had to listen to it. To stop numbing, to stop running, to turn inward, gently, patiently, and ask, what have I forgotten in myself? This is not easy work. It asks for courage, because the truth is, many of us are afraid of what we'll find once we stop distracting ourselves. But maybe that fear is just the beginning of freedom. Maybe the soul doesn't want perfection. Maybe it just wants presence. The modern world teaches you to treat symptoms, not roots. If you can't sleep, you take a pill. If you feel anxious, you distract yourself. If you feel empty, you scroll. Always searching, always reaching, but never arriving. Ibn Sina understood this trap long before it had a name. He believed that true illness begins not in the body, but in the rupture between the soul and the self. And the longer you ignore that rupture, the more your inner world begins to fragment. You become split. The outer you who functions, performs, meets expectations, and the inner you who is quietly falling apart. And the danger is, you can live your whole life in that split. Smiling, succeeding, even inspiring others, while privately feeling lost. Because no one can see your internal collapse. And over time, you stop noticing it too. You normalize it. You wear it like second skin. But Ibn Sina invites us to notice the disconnection. To recognize when our lives have become performative, when we're acting more than we're living. He believed that healing begins when we begin to close the gap between who we are and who we pretend to be. So let me ask you something, gently. When was the last time you were completely honest with yourself? When was the last time you said, "I'm exhausted from pretending," without feeling guilt or shame? When was the last time you allowed your sadness to just exist, without fixing it, labeling it, or rushing past it? We're taught to chase happiness like it's a goal. But happiness, Ibn Sina might say, isn't something you chase, it's something that arises when you become whole again. When all the rejected, exiled parts of you are welcomed back home. But first, you have to find them. You have to go looking in the places you've been avoiding. In the silence, in the stillness, in the memories you said were too much, in the anger you never let yourself feel, in the loneliness that still sits in your chest at night. This is sacred work, and it doesn't happen in grand, dramatic moments. It happens in the quiet, when you choose not to look away. When you sit with the ache instead of running from it. When you ask, "What are you trying to tell me?" instead of trying to silence it. Because every emotion, Ibn Sina believed, is a signal, a call from the self to return, not to fix, but to witness. He believed that just as the body speaks through pain, the soul speaks through longing, restlessness, confusion. And that these are not enemies, but guides. But in our world, we often treat emotional pain as something to eliminate, rather than explore. We say, "Don't cry. Get over it. Be strong." But what if true strength isn't in holding it all together? What if it's in letting yourself fall apart, and trusting that you'll survive the mess? Because here's the truth, the soul doesn't break easily. It bends, it bruises, it withdraws, but it also remembers how to come back. All it needs is your permission. Ibn Sina believed that healing was not passive. You don't sit and wait for time to fix you. You engage, you investigate, you remember. And that remembering isn't just about your story. It's about your essence. The part of you that existed before the world taught you who to be. The part that still knows joy without achievement, peace without perfection, love without condition. It's still there, beneath the performance, beneath the roles, beneath the mask you forgot you were wearing. And sometimes, the breakdown you fear is the breakthrough you need. Because when the mask begins to crack, the light can finally get in. But healing isn't always poetic. Sometimes it's messy. Sometimes it looks like crying in your car. Like canceling plans because you're too tired to pretend. Like realizing you don't even know what makes you happy anymore. And that's okay. Because healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about stripping away everything that isn't you. Ibn Sina, as both physician and philosopher, saw illness not as a defect, but as a message. A disruption that forces you to pay attention. Pain, in his view, was not the enemy, but the language of the body and the soul. The place where truth demands to be heard. And sometimes, truth isn't pretty. It comes in waves of shame, grief, regret. But those waves aren't here to drown you. They're here to wash away everything false. You think you're overwhelmed by life, by responsibilities, expectations, chaos. But what if you're actually drowning in everything you never said, everything you never processed, everything you pushed down to survive? It adds up. Every time you said, "I'm fine," when you weren't. Every smile that masked sadness. Every yes that was really a no. Those little betrayals pile up. And one day, they show up as anxiety, fatigue, burnout. Your nervous system isn't broken. It's exhausted from pretending. And that's when you reach the turning point. The moment where you stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What happened to me?" What happened to make you afraid of rest? Of stillness? Of feeling? What convinced you that your worth is in your output? How much you do, achieve, produce? Ibn Sina would say, "You are not a machine. You are a soul, a living, breathing consciousness meant not just to function, but to feel. To wonder, to create, to connect. And when you forget that, when you reduce yourself to performance, the soul begins to rebel. Not violently, but subtly. Through boredom, through emptiness, through that quiet ache you feel when you've done everything right, but still don't feel whole. That ache is sacred. Don't numb it. Listen to it, because it's trying to guide you back. Ibn Sina believed that real medicine wasn't just about curing illness, but about restoring balance between the body, mind, and soul. And balance doesn't mean perfection. It means honesty. Being honest about what you need, what hurts, what's missing. You can't heal what you pretend doesn't exist. You can't change what you refuse to see. But the moment you decide to stop running, to sit in the discomfort, even for a moment, you begin to reclaim your power. That's what this journey is. Not a race to become better, but a slow return to your real self. The self that's been waiting, quietly, underneath all the roles, labels, expectations. Waiting for your permission to breathe. And you don't have to do it all at once. You start with one breath, one moment of stillness, one question. What part of me have I been avoiding? Then you listen, not for answers, but for honesty, because the soul doesn't need fixing. It needs witnessing. It needs space to speak, and someone brave enough to listen. That someone is you. Sometimes, the most courageous thing you can do is stop. Stop pushing. Stop performing. Stop pretending that you're okay when you're not. Because stopping isn't giving up. It's waking up. Waking up to the truth that your exhaustion has a story. That your numbness is not apathy, it's a survival strategy. That your fear of slowing down is actually a fear of meeting yourself. And what's waiting for you, when you finally stop running, isn't a monster. It's a child, a younger version of you, still waiting to be heard, still hoping someone will notice. And maybe, for the first time in your life, you become that someone. You sit beside the parts of yourself that feel too broken, too heavy, too much. And instead of fixing them, you love them. You say, "I see you. You've carried so much. You don't have to carry it alone anymore." That's not weakness. That's sacred repair. It's what Ibn Sina pointed to in his deepest writings, that the soul doesn't unravel from trauma alone, but from the absence of compassion afterward. Healing isn't linear. You'll move forward and backward. Some days, you'll feel strong. Other days, you'll want to disappear. Both are valid. Both are part of it. Because healing doesn't mean becoming invincible. It means becoming real. And real is messy. Real cries in the dark and laughs through the tears. Real holds contradictions, joy and grief, hope and fear, courage and doubt, all in the same breath. But through that rawness, something magical happens. You start to trust yourself again. You start to feel safe inside your own skin. Not because everything is perfect, but because you stopped abandoning yourself. And when you stop abandoning yourself, you start building a home inside. A place where your pain has room to breathe. Where your dreams can grow again. Where your truth can finally echo freely. That's what Ibn Sina meant by harmony. Not surface-level calm, but deep alignment between who you are and how you live. And from that place of inner alignment, you start to make different choices. You stop chasing what numbs you. You start choosing what nourishes you. You leave behind what was never yours to carry. You reclaim parts of yourself that were left behind in old rooms, old roles, old relationships. And every time you choose truth over comfort, you return home. Home isn't a place. It's a feeling of belonging to yourself, of standing in your own presence and saying, I am enough. Not because I'm perfect, but because I'm whole, even in my brokenness. And when you live from that place, you don't just heal yourself. You become a source of healing for others. Your honesty becomes a mirror. Your presence becomes a refuge. Your story becomes a permission slip for someone else to begin theirs. That's the legacy Ibn Sina left behind, not just of medicine or metaphysics, but of deep human awakening. He reminded us that our souls are not mechanical parts. They are sacred landscapes, filled with hidden rivers, ancient echoes, and seeds still waiting to bloom. And if you can be still long enough to listen, you'll hear them. You'll hear the parts of you that were never broken, just buried. You'll feel the warmth of truths you thought you lost. You'll remember that you were never too far gone. You were just waiting for this moment, this breath, this quiet realization. You're not drowning in life. You're resurfacing from everything you repressed. And now, you're coming home. Not to who you were told to be, but to who you truly are. And that is the beginning of everything.